The stars disappeared one by one, not because they burned out, but because something was blocking them. Something massive. Something that stretched across the night sky like a dark blanket made of metal and death. Commander Torek stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, and watched Earth grow larger on his viewing screen. He had conquered 37 worlds in his career. He had crushed species that wielded gravity as a weapon. He had burned civilizations that had existed for 1,000,000 years. And now, he looked at this small blue planet with nothing but amusement in his 4 eyes. "Commander," his tactical officer said, "we have completed our scan of their military capabilities." Torek turned his massive head. He stood 8 feet tall, his body covered in thick gray skin that could stop most projectile weapons. His species, the Velran, had ruled this part of the galaxy for 10,000 years. They had never lost a war. They had never retreated from a battle. They had never known fear. "Tell me," Torek said, his voice deep like thunder. The tactical officer brought up the data on the main screen. Ships that used chemical fuel to move through space. Weapons that threw small pieces of metal at high speeds. Soldiers that wore clumsy suits to survive in the void. Vehicles that rolled on wheels across the ground. The entire bridge burst into laughter. Torek allowed himself a smile. His teeth were sharp and yellow, designed by evolution to tear through flesh and bone. "Is this truly the best they have?" "Yes, Commander. Their most advanced weapons are nuclear devices. Primitive fusion reactions. We estimate they could damage our shields by approximately 0.3% if they launched their entire arsenal at a single ship." More laughter filled the bridge. Officers slapped their thick hands against their consoles. Some made sounds of disbelief. Others simply shook their heads at the pathetic display. "They have no energy shields," the tactical officer continued. "No faster-than-light travel. No directed energy weapons. Their soldiers require oxygen to breathe and die from injuries that we would consider minor inconveniences." Torek walked closer to the viewing screen. Earth filled his vision now, a beautiful world of blue oceans and green lands and white clouds. It was a garden planet, rare and valuable. Perfect for Velran colonization after they removed most of the current inhabitants. "How many of them are there?" he asked. 8 billion, Commander. "And how many soldiers?" "Approximately 30 million active military personnel across all their nations." Torek nodded slowly. "We will need workers for the mining operations on the outer worlds. 40% of their population should be sufficient. The rest?" He made a gesture with his clawed hand that meant disposal. "Shall I broadcast our demands, Commander?" "Yes. Give them 12 hours to surrender. I want to finish this quickly. There are real enemies waiting for us in the Andromeda sector." The broadcast went out across all of Earth's communication channels. Every television, every radio, every phone, every computer displayed the same message. The Velran Dominion demanded unconditional surrender. 40% of humanity would become slaves. All resources would become Velran property. Resistance would result in extinction. In Seoul, South Korea, the United Defense Council gathered in an underground bunker. Leaders from every major nation sat around a long table, their faces pale with fear. They had known for decades that alien life existed. They had prepared plans for first contact, but nothing had prepared them for this. "We cannot fight them," the American general said. "Our weapons are useless against their shields. Our ships cannot catch theirs. We would be slaughtered in hours. Then we must negotiate," the European representative replied. "Perhaps we can reduce their demands. Save more of our people." "They will not negotiate," the Chinese admiral said grimly. Their message was clear. Surrender or die. The room fell into chaos. Everyone talked at once. Some argued for resistance. Others demanded immediate surrender. A few simply sat in silence, their eyes empty, already accepting death. At the far end of the table, one man had not spoken. General Park Do-han was 58 years old, with silver-streaked hair and calm brown eyes that had seen too many battles. He had served in the military for 40 years. He had commanded troops in peacekeeping missions across 3 continents. He had written books on military strategy that were studied in academies around the world. And right now, he was thinking. His aide, Lieutenant Yoonji Woo, leaned close to him. She was young, only 29, with short black hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Sir, what are your thoughts?" Do-han did not answer immediately. He watched the other leaders argue. He watched fear make them small and weak. He thought about his wife, who had died 3 years ago. He thought about his daughter, who was probably watching the alien broadcast right now with terror in her heart. He thought about his granddaughter, only 5 years old, who would grow up as a slave if he did nothing. "They are making a mistake," he finally said. Ji-woo frowned. "Sir, the aliens. They are making a mistake." Don stood up slowly. The room gradually fell quiet as everyone noticed his movement. "They have scanned our weapons. They have counted our soldiers. They have calculated our chances of victory at 0. Because they are 0, the American general said bitterly. Don shook his head. "No, they have missed something. Something their scans cannot detect. Something their calculations cannot measure. And what is that?" the European representative asked. Do-han looked around the room at the frightened faces of humanity's leaders. "They do not know what we are willing to do. They do not know how we fight when we are desperate. They think war is about technology and numbers and logic." He paused, and his calm eyes became hard as stone. "They are wrong." The room was silent now. Everyone was listening. "I request command of Earth's combined forces," Do-han said. "All nations, all armies, all weapons. Give me complete authority, and I will show these aliens what humanity truly is. What is your strategy?" the Chinese admiral asked. Do-han was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft but steady. "I need to see them bleed first. Just once. I need to show them that we can hurt them. And then I need to make them understand that we will never, ever stop. And if we lose?" the American general asked. Do-han met his eyes. "Then we lose standing on our feet, with weapons in our hands, having made them pay for every inch of our world in blood. We lose as humans, not as slaves." The vote was unanimous. General Park Do-han became the supreme commander of Earth's defense. In orbit, Commander Torek watched the clock count down. 11 hours remained. He expected groveling. He expected begging. He expected humanity to fall on their knees and accept their fate like every other species had. He had no idea what was coming. On Earth, Lieutenant Yoonji Woo worked through the night coordinating communications between every military force on the planet. Armies that had been enemies for centuries now shared their secrets. Nations that had pointed weapons at each other for decades now pointed those weapons at the sky. And in his office, General Park Do-han wrote a letter to his granddaughter. He told her that he loved her. He told her that he was sorry he would not see her grow up. He told her to be brave. Then he sealed the letter and began planning the most desperate defense in human history. The clock continued to count down. 12 hours had felt like an eternity when the broadcast first came. Now it felt like seconds. The fate of humanity hung in the balance, and one old soldier was their only hope. Commander Torek watched the final hour begin with growing impatience. For 11 hours, Earth had been silent. No surrender. No communication. No response of any kind. His officers had suggested that perhaps the humans were still debating among themselves unable to agree on their fate. Torek had laughed at that. It did not matter what they decided. The outcome would be the same. Then, with 53 minutes remaining, a small shuttle launched from the Korean peninsula. "Commander," his tactical officer reported, "a single vessel is approaching our fleet. It is broadcasting a surrender signal." Torek straightened in his command chair. "Finally. Scan it. Scanning now. The vessel is unarmed. No weapons. No explosives. One life form aboard. Human. Male. Let it approach. Direct it to dock with the Eternal Dominion. I will accept their surrender personally." The shuttle was tiny compared to the massive Velrung warships. It looked like an insect flying toward Mountain. The docking procedure took several minutes, and Torek used that time to summon his senior officers to the command chamber. He wanted witnesses. He wanted his crew to see the moment humanity knelt before the Dominion. Over 200 Valorant officers gathered in the grand chamber. It was a massive room with a high ceiling and walls decorated with the flags of conquered worlds. 37 flags, representing 37 species that had once thought themselves strong. Soon, Earth's flag would join them. The doors opened, and General Park Do-han walked in. He was small. That was Torek's first thought. All humans were small compared to the Velrung, but this one seemed especially fragile. He wore a formal military uniform with medals on his chest and stars on his shoulders. His hands were clasped behind his back, and he walked with his head held high, as if he were not surrounded by creatures that could tear him apart with their bare hands. 2 Velrung guards walked beside him, their weapons ready. But Do-han showed no fear. His calm brown eyes moved across the chamber, taking in every detail, counting every officer, measuring every possible threat. Torek rose from his throne and descended the steps to meet the human. He towered over Do-han, casting a shadow that swallowed the small man entirely. "You are the one who speaks for your species?" Torek asked. "I speak for those who will fight," Do-han replied. His voice was steady and clear. A murmur of amusement rippled through the gathered officers. "Fight? With what?" Torek smiled, showing his sharp teeth. "Fight? With your primitive rockets? With your metal bullets? We have analyzed your entire military capability. Your weapons cannot pierce our shields. Your ships cannot match our speed. Your soldiers die from injuries that we consider recreational." Do-han nodded slowly. "You are correct. Technologically, we are children compared to you. Then kneel." Torek gestured to the floor. "Accept the Dominion's mercy while it is still offered." "Not yet." The chamber fell silent. No one had ever refused Torek's command. No one had ever said, "Not yet," to a Velrung commander. "What did you say?" Torek's voice was suddenly cold. "I said not yet." Do-han's expression did not change. "First, I want to show you something that your scans missed." He reached into his uniform pocket, and every guard in the room raised their weapon. But Do-han only pulled out a small tablet, a simple device that the guards had already scanned and cleared as harmless. "May I?" he asked, gesturing toward the chamber's display system. Torek hesitated. This was unusual. This was not how surrenders worked. But his curiosity was stronger than his caution. He nodded to his tactical officer, who connected the tablet to the main display. The screen lit up with images from Earth's history, not their technology. Their wars. The first image showed a frozen city covered in snow and blood. Human soldiers in ragged uniforms, their faces gray with hunger and cold, fighting in the ruins of buildings. The display identified it as Stalingrad, a battle from Earth's past. "This battle lasted 5 months, Do-han said. The temperature dropped to -40 degrees. Soldiers froze to death in their positions. They ran out of food and ate rats. They ran out of bullets and fought with knives. When their knives broke, they fought with rocks. When their hands froze, they used their teeth. He paused. 1 million humans died, but they did not surrender. The image changed. Now it showed trenches filled with mud and bodies. Soldiers climbing over the dead to reach the enemy. Clouds of poison gas drifting across a scarred landscape. This was Verdun. 10 months of fighting over a few miles of ground. 300,000 dead. Every soldier who went there knew he would probably die. They went anyway. Another image. Boats landing on a beach covered with metal obstacles and enemy fire. Soldiers falling by the hundreds as they ran towards certain death. This was Normandy. The first wave of soldiers had a 90% casualty rate. They knew this before they left. They boarded the boats anyway. They ran toward the guns anyway. The images continued. Humans fighting in jungles, in deserts, in mountains, in cities reduced to rubble, fighting when they were outnumbered, fighting when they were outgunned, fighting when there was no logical reason to continue. Tarek watched without expression, but something cold was growing in his chest. Something unfamiliar. "You think this demonstrates strength?" He finally said. "It demonstrates stupidity. These battles were wasteful, inefficient. Your species throws away lives for no reason." "Perhaps," Doan agreed. "But it demonstrates something else." He stepped closer to Torek, close enough that the Velran commander could see every line on the human's weathered face. "We do not calculate acceptable losses. We do not retreat when the mathematics say we should. We are not rational about survival." He met Torek's 4 eyes with his 2. "You have conquered species that surrendered when defeat became statistically certain. Species that valued their lives above their freedom. Species that made logical decisions." Dohan's voice dropped to almost a whisper. "We are not that species." "You will still lose," Torek said, but his voice had lost some of its confidence. "Yes, probably, but you will have to kill every single one of us to win. Every soldier, every civilian, every child, because we will not stop. We will fight until the last human draws the last breath on the last day. And we will make you pay for each death in ways that will haunt your empire forever." The chamber was completely silent now. 200 Velran officers stood frozen, watching this small creature speak to their commander, as if he were an equal. Tarek felt something he had not felt in over a century of warfare. He felt doubt. "Take him back to his shuttle," he ordered. "This changes nothing. The attack will proceed on schedule." Dahan bowed his head slightly, the only sign of respect he had shown. "Of course, Commander. I only wanted you to know what you are facing. When your soldiers begin to die, remember that I warned you." He turned and walked toward the door, his back straight, his stride confident. The guards escorted him out, as he passed through the crowd of officers. Dohan noticed a young Velran watching him with unusual intensity. She was smaller than the others, with lighter gray skin and intelligent eyes. Her uniform identified her as a translator, someone who studied alien languages and cultures. Their eyes met for just a moment. Dohan saw something in her expression that surprised him. Not anger, not contempt. It was curiosity, perhaps even respect. Then he was past her, and the doors closed behind him. What no one noticed was that Dohan's shuttle had been running the entire time he spoke. Its navigation system was active, its sensors were scanning, and every piece of data about the flagship's layout, guard positions, and shield generators was being transmitted back to Earth. Lieutenant Yunjiwoo received the transmission in her bunker beneath. So, she watched the data stream across her screen and felt something like hope for the first time since the aliens had arrived. "Sir," she said into her communicator when Dohan's shuttle cleared the Velran fleet. "We have everything. Shield frequencies, power distribution, command structure, everything. Good. Dohan's voice came back, tired but determined. Now we can begin. Begin what, sir? There was a long pause. When Dohan spoke again, his voice was hard as iron, teaching them that some species are too stubborn to conquer. The shuttle descended through Earth's atmosphere, carrying one old soldier and the beginning of a plan that would change the galaxy forever. In orbit. Commander Torek stared at the planet below, and for the first time in his long career, wondered if he had underestimated his enemy. He pushed the feeling aside. They were primitive. They were weak. They would fall like all the others. He had no idea how wrong he was. The attack came at dawn, Korean time. The Velran expected the battle to last 4 hours. They were wrong. It lasted 11 days. The first wave of Velran landing craft descended through Earth's atmosphere like meteors of death. Their shields glowed bright orange as they pushed through the air. Their weapon systems hummed with energy that could vaporize entire city blocks. Inside each craft, hundreds of Velran soldiers waited, eager to crush this primitive world and return home as heroes. They never saw the missiles coming. General Park Dohan had positioned Earth's nuclear submarines in precise locations across the world's oceans. When the landing craft entered the atmosphere, they launched. Not at the ships themselves, but at the air around them. The nuclear explosions created massive electromagnetic pulses that disrupted Volran, sensors and navigation for precious seconds. In those seconds, human pilots struck. They flew old jets and new fighters and experimental aircraft that had never been tested in real combat. They knew they could not destroy the Velran ships. Their weapons were too weak, the enemy's shields too strong, so they did not try to destroy them. They flew directly into them. Captain Choi Min-soo was 34 years old and had a wife and 2 daughters waiting for him in Bizen. He had volunteered for the first attack wave, knowing he would not survive. As his fighter closed on a Velran landing craft, he thought about his daughters' faces. He thought about the swing set he had built them in the backyard. He thought about all the birthdays he would miss. Then he aimed his fighter at the ship's engine exhaust and pushed his throttle to maximum. The explosion was small by Velran standards, but it was enough. The engine failed. The landing craft spun out of control and crashed into a mountainside, killing 300 Velran soldiers. Across the planet, 200 human pilots did the same thing. They flew suicide missions into engine ports, into sensor arrays, into landing gear mechanisms. Each pilot knew they would die. Each pilot flew anyway. The Velran had never seen anything like it. Commander Torek watched the battle reports with disbelief. They are crashing their own aircraft into our ships? Deliberately? Yes, Commander, his tactical officer replied, his voice shaking. They are sacrificing themselves as weapons. That is insane. Yes, Commander. It is. On the ground, the fighting was even worse. Human armies did not defend their cities the way the Velran expected. They did not form lines and try to hold territory. Instead, they turned every city into a trap. Buildings were rigged with explosives. Streets were filled with hidden holes covered by thin materials that would collapse under the weight of Velran soldiers. Water systems were poisoned. Power grids were destroyed. Nothing was left that could help the invaders. And when the Velran finally took a city, when they thought the fighting was over, the real attack began. Soldiers who had hidden in basements and sewers emerged at night. They attacked supply lines. They killed officers in their beds. They set fire to ammunition stores. They struck without warning and vanished before the Velran could respond. Captain Lee Yunji commanded a battalion of 800 soldiers defending the Nakdong River line. She was 31 years old, with a scar on her cheek from a training accident and eyes that burned with fierce determination. Her orders were to hold the river crossing for 12 hours to allow civilians to evacuate. She held it for 3 days. When her ammunition ran out, her soldiers threw rocks. When their rifles jammed, they used them as clubs. When the Velrun breached their lines with overwhelming force, Li Yunji ordered her surviving troops to fix bayonets. "Bayonets, Captain?" her sergeant asked, his face pale with exhaustion. "Bayonets," she confirmed. "We are going to charge." "Captain, there are 2,000 of them." Li Yunji looked at her soldiers. 300 remained from the original 800. They were bloody, tired, and terrified. But they were still standing. "Then we had better run fast," she said. They charged. The Velrun had never seen a bayonet charge. They had never fought an enemy that ran toward certain death instead of away from it. They had never heard the sound of 300 humans screaming as they sprinted across an open field toward an enemy that outnumbered them 10 to 1. The charge failed, of course. Li Yunji and her soldiers were killed almost to the last person, but they did not die alone. Their bayonets found gaps in Velrun armor. Their grenades detonated at point-blank range. Their bare hands clawed at enemy eyes and throats, even as they were cut down. 2,000 Velrun soldiers died at the Nakdong River. It was the first significant loss the Dominion had suffered in over a century. When Commander Torek received the report, he threw his datapad across the bridge. "How?" he demanded. "How did primitive infantry kill 2,000 of our soldiers?" They would not stop, Commander," the tactical officer said. "Our soldiers shot them, and they kept coming. We destroyed their weapons, and they attacked with tools. We killed their officers, and the common soldiers kept fighting without orders. They are insane," Tarek repeated for the 100th time since the battle began. "No, Commander," a quiet voice said. Tarek turned. It was the young translator he had noticed during the surrender meeting. Her name was Beek Sora, and she had been studying human culture and language for months in preparation for the conquest. "Explain," Tarek ordered. Sora stepped forward carefully. "They are not insane. They are afraid. They are in pain. They know they are going to lose. But they fight anyway because—" She hesitated, searching for words. "Because giving up is worse than dying. Because they would rather be dead than slaves. Because somewhere in their primitive minds, they believe that dying with honor means something. Honor?" Torek spat the word. "There is no honor in losing. To them, there is honor in how you lose," Sora said. "There is honor in making your enemy pay for victory. There is honor in being remembered as someone who never surrendered." She met Torek's eyes. "We have never fought a species like this before, Commander." Torek was silent for a long moment. Then he turned back to the viewing screen. "Continue the attack. They cannot sustain these losses forever." But as the days passed, the Velrun losses mounted. Submarines surfaced beneath landing craft and detonated nuclear weapons at point-blank range, vaporizing both vessels. Civilian vehicles packed with explosives drove into Velrun camps. Old men and women picked up fallen soldiers' weapons and kept fighting until they were cut down. Lieutenant Yoon Ji-woo coordinated communications from her bunker beneath Seoul. She had been awake for 72 hours. Her eyes were red, her hands shook, and her voice was hoarse from constant talking. But she kept working, connecting units, relaying orders, tracking the impossible battle unfolding across the planet. When she reported to General Dawn that they had lost 60% of their forces, she expected despair. She expected to see defeat in his eyes. Instead, Dawn asked a strange question. "How are they sleeping?" Ji-woo blinked. "Sir?" "The Velrun crews. The soldiers. How are they sleeping?" Ji-woo checked the intercepted communications. Her eyes widened. Velrun soldiers were requesting sedatives at unprecedented rates. Medical officers reported nightmares throughout the fleet. 3 officers had committed suicide rather than continue the assault. Fights were breaking out between soldiers over food and equipment. "They are struggling, sir," Jiwoo said. Dawn nodded slowly. "Then we are winning." "Winning?" "Sir, we have lost millions of people. Our military is almost destroyed." "Yes, but they expected to conquer us in 4 hours. It has been 9 days, and they are still fighting. Every day they spend here is a day they are not conquering another world. Every soldier they lose is a soldier they cannot replace. And every nightmare their troops suffer is a seed of fear that will grow into something they cannot control." He looked at Jiwoo with eyes that were tired but still burning with purpose. "We cannot beat them, Lieutenant. I never thought we could. But we can hurt them so badly that they will never forget us. We can make them afraid of what other species might be willing to do. We can plant a legend that will spread across the galaxy." He paused. "And that legend will be humanity's revenge." Jiwoo felt tears on her cheeks. She did not wipe them away. "What do we do now, sir?" Dohan turned to his maps and began moving markers that represented units that no longer existed. "Now," he said softly, "we prepare for the final phase." By day 9, Earth's organized military was effectively destroyed. The armies of humanity had been shattered. The navies were sunk. The air forces were grounded. Scattered groups of soldiers continued to fight in pockets across the planet, but they were no longer a coordinated force. They were survivors, doing what they could with what they had left. The Velrun controlled every major city. Their flags flew over the capitals of every nation. Their soldiers walked the streets of New York, Moscow, Beijing, and Seoul. The war, by any reasonable measure, was over. Commander Torek finally allowed himself to relax. "Begin the collection process," he ordered. "Round up the healthy specimens for transport. We need workers for the mining operations." But something was wrong. As the Velrun soldiers began gathering humans, they noticed something strange. The civilians were not fighting. They were not running. They were simply waiting, standing in orderly lines, their faces calm, their eyes watching the sky. "Commander," the tactical officer reported, "the humans are cooperating with collection." Torek frowned. This was not what he expected. After 11 days of insane resistance, why would they suddenly become docile? "Perhaps they have finally accepted their fate," he said. But the words felt hollow. In the ruins of Seoul, General Park Dohun was being dragged through the streets by Velrun soldiers. They had found him in his bunker, still issuing orders to units that no longer existed. His face was bloody. His uniform was torn, but his eyes remained calm. They brought him to Commander Torek's ground headquarters, a massive building that had once been a government center. Torek was waiting for him, seated on a throne that his soldiers had constructed from the debris of human civilization. "So," Torek said, looking down at the broken human, "you are the one who caused us so much trouble." Dawan looked up at him. Despite the chains on his wrists, despite the blood on his face, he smiled. "Commander," he said, "do you know what snow is?" Torek paused. The question was so unexpected, so strange, that it threw him off balance. "What?" "Snow. Frozen water that falls from the sky. Very common on our planet, especially in winter." Dahan's voice was gentle, almost peaceful. "When I was a boy, my grandfather used to take me to the mountains to watch the snowfall. I remember thinking how beautiful it was. How clean. Why are you telling me this?" Torek demanded. "Because snow has a special quality." Dahan continued as if he had not heard the question. "When enough of it falls, it covers everything. The dirt, the rocks, the blood, the bodies. Everything becomes white, pure, like nothing bad ever happened." Torek felt the cold sensation return to his chest. The same feeling he had felt during their first meeting. "You are stalling. Why?" Dahan's smile widened. "Commander, in approximately 4 minutes, you are going to see more white than you have ever seen in your life." Something in his voice made Torek's blood freeze. "What have you done?" he demanded. "I have spent the last 11 days positioning your forces," Dahan said. "Every city we defended, every line we held, every tactical retreat we made. It was all designed to concentrate your troops in specific locations." Torek's eyes widened. "Impossible. You were fighting desperately. You were losing." "We were losing," Dahan agreed. "But we were also hurting. Like farmers guiding animals into pens. Your soldiers are so scattered across our cities that you cannot evacuate them quickly. Your shields are designed to protect against external attacks, not attacks from below." Torek stood up from his throne. "What are you saying?" "I am saying that humanity's last weapons are not pointed at your ships." Dahan's voice dropped to a whisper. "They are pointed at ourselves, across the planet, in bunkers and submarines and hidden caves." The surviving members of humanity's military activated the final protocol. Operation White. Field Dot. It had been planned from the beginning. The real defense was never about winning. It was never about stopping the Velaran invasion. It was about making victory so costly that no one would ever try to conquer humanity again. 6,000 nuclear warheads launched simultaneously, but they did not fly toward space. They did not target the Velaran fleet. They targeted Earth, every major city where Velaran forces had gathered, every concentration point, every supply depot, every landing zone. Locations that human soldiers had fought and died to defend, not to protect them, but to make them attractive targets. Tarek watched in horror as the planet below erupted in nuclear fire. Mushroom. Clouds bloomed like flowers across every continent. The electromagnetic pulses fried exposed Velaran systems. Communications went silent. The viewing screen flickered with static as nuclear. Winter began to spread, but the true horror was not the explosions. Velaran. Translators were still picking up human communications from the surface. Signals from the blast zones themselves. Voices. Calm voices. Sergeant Han Jiho reporting from Seoul Ground Zero. Package delivered. Tell my wife I love her. Lieutenant Beek Yuna at Beijing Station 4. Detonation successful. It has been an honor. Corporal Moon Sung-ho, Pyongyang. The sky is so bright. It is almost beautiful. They were not screaming. They were not begging. The humans at Ground Zero, the ones who had volunteered to stay behind to ensure the detonations succeeded, were transmitting their final messages with the same calm acceptance as someone reporting the weather. Torek heard children singing. Someone in a bunker near a blast zone was leading children in the song as the shockwave approached. The song cut off abruptly when the wave hit, but for those few seconds, he heard innocent voices singing about sunshine and flowers while the world ended around them. On the viewing screen, Earth was disappearing under clouds of ash and fire. The blue-green jewel that had seemed so beautiful 11 days ago was becoming a gray ball of death. And still the human voices came. This is Grandmother Kim from Incheon. I am 87 years old. I survived 3 wars. I will not survive this one, but neither will you. Remember us. Father Park from Daegu Cathedral. May God forgive us for what we have done. May God help those who survive. And may God damn every alien who ever thought they could make us kneel. Torek turned away from the screen. He could not watch anymore. Commander, his tactical officer reported, voice shaking. We have lost over 60% of our ground forces. The electromagnetic pulses have disabled 34 ships. Total casualties are... He swallowed. Total casualties are higher than any engagement in Dominion history. The bridge was silent. 200 officers stood frozen, unable to process what they were witnessing. Tarek looked at the chains still binding General Park Dahan's wrists. The old human was watching him, that strange smile still on his face. "You killed your own world," Tarek said, his voice barely a whisper. "Yes," Dahan replied simply. "You killed billions of your own people." "Yes. For what?" "You have destroyed yourselves. You have gained nothing." Dahan shook his head slowly. "You still do not understand, Commander. We did not do this to win. We did this to send a message." "What message?" Dahan's eyes burned with a fire that had nothing to do with the nuclear flames covering his planet. "The message is this: some species are not worth conquering. Some worlds are too expensive to take. Some enemies will burn everything they have, including themselves, before they let you take it from them." He leaned forward as far as his chains would allow. "And you, Commander Torek of the Velran Dominion, are going to carry that message back to your empire. You are going to tell everyone what happened here. And the next time your people think about invading a world, they are going to remember Earth. They are going to remember the species that chose extinction over slavery." Torek stared at him for a long moment. "You are monsters," he finally said. Duhan laughed. It was a tired sound, the laugh of a man who had given everything and had nothing left. "We are humans," he said. "And now you know what that means." The nuclear winter continued to spread across Earth. The planet was dying. But in the darkness, scattered groups of survivors were emerging from deep bunkers built specifically for this moment. They were few. They were wounded. They were contaminated with radiation, but they were alive, and they were already picking up weapons. Commander Torek stood on the bridge of the Eternal Dominion and made the hardest decision of his career. "All ships, prepare for departure." The order echoed across the fleet. For a moment, no one moved. No one could believe what they had heard. "Commander?" His tactical officer stepped forward, confusion written across his gray face. We are leaving?" "Yes, but Commander, we can still win." The humans are devastated. Their civilization is in ruins. Most of their population is dead. We could finish them off in a matter of days. Torek did not answer immediately. He stood at the viewing screen, watching the gray-white ball that had once been Earth. Nuclear winter was spreading across the continents. Ash clouds blocked the sunlight. The beautiful blue oceans were turning dark with debris. And yet, on the planet's surface, his sensors were picking up movement. Humans emerging from bunkers. Humans organizing. Humans picking up weapons and forming into groups. Not thousands of them. Not millions. Just hundreds here and there, scattered across a dying world. But they were not running. They were not hiding. They were preparing to fight again. "Look at them," Torek said quietly. His officers turned to their screens. They saw what their commander saw. Tiny groups of humans, sick with radiation, starving, surrounded by the corpses of their civilization, setting up defensive positions and scavenging weapons from the dead. "They cannot win," the tactical officer said. "There is nothing left to fight for." "They know that," Torek replied. "And they are fighting anyway." He finally turned to face his bridge crew. These were veterans, soldiers who had conquered a dozen worlds. They had never retreated from a battle. They had never abandoned a campaign. They looked at him now with confusion and something that might have been fear. "Consider what we have witnessed," Tarek said. "We came here with 4,000 ships. We had technology that these creatures could not even understand. We expected to conquer them in 4 hours." He paused. "It has been 11 days. We have lost a quarter of our fleet. We have lost 2/3 of our ground forces. We have lost more soldiers than in any campaign in Dominion history. But we won, the tactical officer insisted. Did we? Torek gestured at the viewing screen. We came here for workers and resources. We were going to take 40% of their population as slaves. We were going to extract their minerals and use their world as a colony. He laughed bitterly. Look at it now. The world is poisoned. The resources are radioactive. The population is nearly extinct. And the survivors would rather die than serve us. He walked among his officers, meeting their eyes one by one. If we finish this campaign, if we kill every last human, what do we tell the Dominion? That we won? That we defeated a species that could not even achieve faster than light travel? That we are heroes? No one answered. Or do we tell them the truth? That we lost more soldiers to these primitives than we have lost in the last 100 years of conquest? That they were so unwilling to surrender that they destroyed their own world rather than let us take it? That we, the mighty Velran Dominion, were so shaken by a single planet that we needed 11 days to subdue it? The silence stretched on. Every species in the galaxy will hear this story, Torek continued. They will hear that humans are insane. That fighting them means total war with no possibility of surrender. That even if you win, you lose, because they will burn everything they have before they let you take it. He returned to his command position and sat down heavily. Or we leave now. We report that Earth was not worth the cost. We classify this campaign and never speak of it again. And we pray that humanity never develops the technology to reach our space. The tactical officer was quiet for a long moment. Then he asked the question that everyone was thinking. What about the survivors, Commander? If we leave them, then they will rebuild. Torek's voice was tired. In 100 years, maybe 200, they will develop space travel. They will spread across the stars. And they will remember what we did here. They will be a threat. Yes, the greatest threat the Dominion has ever faced. Not because of their technology, but because of what they are willing to do. Torek closed his 4 eyes. We could have made them our slaves. Instead, we have made them our enemies. And unlike every other enemy we have ever faced, these will never stop. Never forgive. Never forget. The fleet began to withdraw from Earth orbit. On the surface, General Park Dohan watched the ships rise through the ash clouds and disappear into the sky. He was lying on a stretcher, too weak from radiation poisoning to stand. Lieutenant Yoon Ji-woo sat beside him, holding his hand. "They are leaving, sir," she said, her voice cracked with emotion. "We won." Dohan smiled weakly. "We did not win, Lieutenant. We survived. There is a difference. What do we do now?" Dohan looked at the gray sky, at the world that would need decades to recover, at the handful of survivors who were already building shelters and planting seeds in the poisoned soil. "We remember," he said. "We rebuild. And we prepare. For what? For the day when we go out there." He pointed at the sky with a trembling hand. "And remind them what they started." 3 weeks later, General Park Dohan died from radiation poisoning. He refused treatment until the end, insisting that the limited medical supplies go to younger survivors. His last words were recorded by Lieutenant Yoon Ji-woo on a small device that she had protected throughout the entire war. Those words became humanity's first interstellar broadcast, transmitted on every frequency, repeated on every station, sent into the void for anyone who might be listening. We are still here. We will remember. And if you ever return, know this: we are no longer the species you mocked. We are the species that made the Velran Dominion flee. We are the species that turned our own world white rather than kneel. We are humanity, and we are just getting started. 50 years passed. Earth slowly healed. The nuclear winter faded. The ash settled. New forests grew in the ruins of old cities. New generations were born who had never seen the sky turn white. But they knew the stories. Every child learned about the 11 days. Every soul taught about the sacrifice. Every soldier trained with the knowledge of what their ancestors had done. And finally, after 5 decades of work, the first human starship launched from the surface of Earth. It was called the Dohan, named after the general who had saved humanity through destruction. Its crew was small but determined. Its technology was new but built on the foundation of everything they had learned during the war. Captain Cam Minha stood on the bridge as her ship entered Velaran space for the first time. She was 32 years old, with her grandmother's fierce eyes and her grandfather's calm voice. Her grandmother had survived Seoul. Her grandfather had been one of the soldiers at the Nakdong River, wounded but alive when Captain Lee Yoonji's charge had broken the Velaran line. "Captain," her communications officer reported, "we are receiving multiple signals from the Velaran fleet. They are demanding identification." Minha smiled. It was the same smile that General Dohan had worn when he faced Commander Torek for the first time. "Tell them who we are," she said. The message went out, and across the Velaran Empire, alarms began to sound. The humans were coming. When Captain Kang Minha's ship reached the first Velaran world, she found something unexpected. The cities were intact. The defenses were active. But the soldiers were standing down. A delegation came to meet her, led by an elderly Velaran with light gray skin and intelligent eyes. Something about her seemed familiar. "Welcome, Captain," the Velaran said. "I am Beek Sora. I was a translator during the war with your world. I have spent the last 50 years learning your language and your history." Ming has studied her carefully. "You were there when my great-grandfather faced Commander Torek." "Yes, I was the one who told Torek that he did not understand what he was fighting." Sora paused. "I have spent my entire life wondering if I could have stopped the war. If I had spoken sooner. If I had explained better. And now?" Sora looked at the human ship, at the crew who stood ready for battle, at the weapons that were far more advanced than anything Earth had possessed 50 years ago. "Now I wonder if it was always inevitable. If two species so different were always destined to clash." She met Minha's eyes. "But I also wonder if we might find another way this time." Minha was silent for a long moment. Then she reached out her hand. "We are not here for revenge," she said. "We are here to make sure that what happened to us never happens to anyone else. And we are here to show you that humans can be something other than monsters." Sora looked at the offered hand. In Velaran culture, touching a stranger was a sign of deep trust. She took it. "Then let us begin," she said. In the years that followed, the story of Earth spread across the galaxy. Every species heard about the humans who had burned their own world rather than surrender. Every empire thought twice before threatening a human colony. And whenever humans met new species, the same question was asked, with something between fear and awe. "Are you really the ones who burned your own world?" The answer was always the same. A smile, calm and confident, and 3 simple words. "We prefer to say we cleaned it." General Park Do-hoon's message continued to broadcast into the void. A reminder and a warning to anyone who might hear it. We are humanity. We do not kneel. And we are just getting started.